Hello, welcome back to the Bliss Bean. Today's video is a little less lighthearted than they usually are. I also want to warn you that I will be talking about disordered eating, and so please turn this video off if you need to, and just take care of yourself. So I make a lot of content about productivity and planning and habits and just living the best life possible. And a lot of people online as well as in my real life comment that I seem like this perfect person who has it all together 100% of the time. And it's a fun persona to play, but it's not the whole story. And I generally don't talk about the other side of things on here because I prefer to keep this inspirational and motivational, simply because I know that when I'm in a low place, I like to look at more positive things to help me get out of that. But at the same time, I do think it's important to be honest, and there's a point where it gets too far and people just assume that I don't struggle with things, and I want to clear that up. I initially got the idea for this video because a few weeks ago I got an email to sign up for this online healthcare thing where now that you're 18 you can schedule and track your own appointments and all of your medical history and stuff. And as I was just kind of exploring it, I noticed how many appointments I went to in 2016 and 2017. So now that a few years have passed since then, I understand that part of my life much more clearly, and I think I can talk about it from a more level-headed, understanding and compassionate point of view. I don't think the story really starts in 2016. We could start all the way back in 6th grade, and because I have written a blog post on this topic and I think I just did such a great job explaining 6th grade in there, I just want to read a snippet from that. That winter, I soon found myself spiraling into a terrible sadness. It's hard to remember much from this period of my life. I remember that I got sick a lot, which only made the situation worse because I would have to make up work at home. I remember that random thoughts would start troubling me. A memory of something stupid I did would resurface and nag me constantly. And then another memory. I collected agitating memories like knickknacks and turned them over and over in my mind. I couldn't fall asleep at night. I was constantly crying and I could hardly smile around my family. My parents were concerned, but they didn't understand at all, which made me feel very alone. So yeah, basically throughout my whole life, I've just been super perfectionistic, wanting to do everything and do it well. And 6th grade just introduced a lot of new opportunities for me to be a perfectionist. And so my teacher found out about it, and she kind of told me about similar experiences that she'd had, and I was able to get through that season. 8th grade, however, was also really rough for me because the jump in the workload from 7th grade to the workload in 8th grade was so huge. I did all of the extra credit. I would come in during lunch, and I don't know why I cared so much because middle school grades don't matter. And so I did perfectly, but then what happened was I went into 9th grade, and 9th grade felt too easy. I felt like everyone else was just racing ahead of me. They had 4-year plans for the classes they wanted to take. They were studying for the PSATs. They were getting involved in different clubs right from the get-go. And I just felt a little lost. There was so much I wanted to do and get involved in, and I didn't know where to start, and I felt like a failure because of that. There's a specific day my freshman year where I remember just almost bursting into tears during Spanish class because all of these feelings had been building up, and I just felt so disappointed in myself for not making better use of my time in high school right away. It sounds totally unreasonable to me now because it kind of was. Looking back at it, I definitely was not falling behind other people, and everyone needs a little bit of time to adjust to high school, but I just had all this energy in me and I needed to put it towards something. And unfortunately, the outlet that I chose for all of this energy was controlling my weight. I've never had a super great relationship with food or just body image in general because, for one, food and weight have been touchy subjects in my family for as long as I can remember, and I would be foolish to think that all of the arguments that were started because of that didn't affect me in any way. I also remember in 6th grade, our teacher showed us this documentary about type 2 diabetes, but for some reason for me, I heard the statistic that 1/3 of all people would get type 2 diabetes in their lifetime, and I was so worried that I was paralyzed from taking any actual action towards living a healthier life. All I could do was worry that I would get diabetes. So I guess all of this was kind of simmering until I finally had Sorry, there's like a hair in my mouth. Until I finally had the motivation and like the energy to start taking action, and in the worst way possible. It happened pretty gradually, I think, as it usually does. I started restricting my food and eventually pushing myself to eat as little for every meal as I could get by on. I couldn't allow myself to eat foods that I consider to be unhealthy. I created my own exercise schedule and was exercising a lot. Now to me, I don't know how I sustained it. I don't know how I had the energy to pull that off. And I even counted calories, which for someone like me who's so data driven and precise about everything they do in life was a very, very slippery slope. So it didn't take very long for me to start seeing the effects of this. A little bit of backstory: I got my first period when I was 13. It was great and regular for more than a year. The only time that I missed one was when we went to Lithuania, and that was obviously like the stress of travel and jet lag. That was totally normal. But what wasn't normal was the fact that I had a period on October 13th, 2015, and then I didn't have my next one until April 6th, 2017. So that was almost a year and a half, and that most certainly was not stress and jet lag. I don't even remember how I reasoned in my head that not getting my period for this long was normal. It was easy for me to pretend that all of this was for health, because if you were only paying attention to the fact that I had finally developed a consistent exercise habit and I was eating better food, it seemed like I was doing pretty well. And no one knew that I wasn't getting my period, so I was really the only one who knew about this problem, and I didn't really even view it as a problem. I actually was seriously considering like studying nutrition and dietetics in school. Like, I thought that I had found my passion and career path. Also, as you probably know, the online health community is huge and has tons of information, which can be helpful, but it also makes it like a super dangerous black hole to fall into if you're not in the right mindset to consume that information. So yeah, basically things were just getting pretty bad. Eventually my parents started noticing, and they made an appointment for me to see the doctor. My period wasn't really something that I'd ever talked about with my family. Like, once I got my first one and my mom like set me up and I was good to go, I just kind of dealt with it myself, and so no one knew that I wasn't getting my period. But I knew that they would ask me at the doctor's office, because they always ask you, when was your last period? And I knew that I would have to admit that I hadn't gotten it in like 7 months. I knew that I had done this to myself. I had gotten myself to this point, and I felt so guilty about that. And it was just like a waiting judgment day where I would finally be discovered and I'd have to confess, and they would make me stop doing what I was doing, but I didn't want to stop doing because I didn't want to gain weight. I wanted to lose more weight. So yeah, that night I just tried to stay awake for as long as possible, because sleep would make the time go by faster, and I wanted to hold it off for as long as I possibly could. I think it was at that first appointment that my doctor asked me what kind of stuff I was involved in high school, and when I started listing all of the activities that I was involved in, I feel like I almost saw like this understanding wash over his face, where he kind of understood the root of my problem, like where all of this desire to control my weight was coming from, because he saw that I also had this desire to control everything in my life. This time of my life really sucked, and I just had to change my camera battery, so that kind of ruined the mood. But yeah, I'm not really happy with how my family responded to this and dealt with this situation. Obviously, it's far in the past and I've long since gotten over it, but it was just such a point of tension in our family. Every appointment was so tense and would end with me in tears, and every drive home was like a big argument over who saw this coming and who didn't, and who responded properly and who didn't. It was just a constant war in addition to the war that was going on within me. It's so poetic. I feel like when people around you are sick or hurt, it's very important to stay calm so that they stay calm as well. Like, if someone falls and breaks their leg, you have to stay calm and act like everything is okay even if you are panicking, because making the injured person start panicking is not going to help anything. And obviously my situation was not a broken leg, but at the heart of it, I was sick and I just wanted like a sense of peace and calm. So in that year, I had 13 doctor's visits, which is a far cry from your usual annual checkup. I saw my doctor a bunch of times. I think I saw a psychologist a couple of times. I got some x-rays done, some blood work. I obviously knew that what I was doing was unhealthy and would have effects on my body, but for some reason, I didn't know that any of those effects would be long lasting, and I probably was avoiding that information. Like, the main thing I didn't know was that not getting my period while I was growing, which was a really critical stage in my life, meant that I was not developing bone density, and so it was just flatlined where it was supposed to be going up. And once I stopped growing, it would not have the opportunity to increase anymore. So basically, I had set myself back, and it was possible that I would never reach a normal level and that I would have problems with osteoporosis as I grew older. So as I mentioned, I didn't want to gain weight, but it was things like that that kind of convinced me that I had to change things. So the recovery process was kind of slow at first because I was definitely half-assing it. I was like, well, I can still keep exercising. I'll just try to eat more to like balance it out. But my period just was not coming back, so eventually my doctor was like, you can't exercise any more than 1 day per week. And as crazy as that sounded to me, it worked. April 6, 2017, I got my period at school, which is quite insane when you haven't had it for a year and a half. Actually, that day we were leaving for a trip to San Francisco, so that was a really nice way to like start off this trip with my family. Just kind of a milestone marking that I had gotten better. Someone asked me how I got over my fear of eating unhealthy foods and of gaining weight, and I answered in 2 parts. I got over my fear of gaining weight because I realized that when I ate more, the results were not nearly as bad as I thought they would be. I did not balloon up. I merely felt better and put on more muscle. And then when it came to learning how to eat unhealthy foods, I just saw how much more fun life was when I didn't worry all the time. And when I say that I got over my fear of these things, I want to clarify that it's never 100%. I still have days where I don't have great body image or I feel guilty about eating unhealthy things, but it's so much better than where I used to be, and I'm healthy now, I feel healthy, and that's what matters. I don't think it's possible to achieve 100% recovery, but as close as you can get to it is what you're aiming for. So the whole point of this video is to show that even if my online presence or even the way I present myself in the real world makes it seem like I've got my life together 100% of the time, there are certainly dark days or even dark weeks where I feel down and unmotivated and sad. It's just when I'm in that space, I don't really want to engage with the world. I kind of tend to retreat and hide, and so people don't really see that, but it definitely happens. I still struggle even after getting through those periods, no pun intended, those periods of my life. But when looking at the bigger picture on a grander scale, I am doing so much better than I was in middle school, at the start of high school. Literally, whenever I look back at like Google Photos or scroll far back in my Instagram, I'm just like, damn, I am doing so much better than I was last year. And every year I feel like that. I feel like, yes, I finally got into a good place, and then it gets better because I keep working on myself. And that's the hopeful note that I want to end this on. There's always room in life to improve. You can create a better life for yourself. You have that power within you. Don't feel overwhelmed by the idea of perfection because it's unattainable. No one can achieve it. But feel inspired by the idea that little tiny changes that you make in your life can lead to you becoming a happier and more fulfilled person. That's really my purpose with my blog and my YouTube channel, is to inspire you to make those small changes and to improve your life. And if by watching my videos you have experienced that on even the smallest scale, then I have been successful. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to this story. If you or anyone you know is struggling with eating disorders, there is a helpline at 800-931-2237. I believe in you. You can get better. See you next week.